District Pond Boss.
Here we
Tell me
go.
what to do
Going live.
to make all my
Hunker Lake dreams come true. That's old Philip Wildman, good friend of ours from down the road here in Dorchester, Texas. Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, checking in with you guys. Hope you guys are having a great, happy New Year. Man, it's really glad to get back and hang out with you guys. It's been about 3 weeks. Jeez. You know, the first, of course, we had Christmas, and I even thought about doing it on Christmas, but that didn't make any sense. And then we had New Year's, and that didn't make any sense. And then we had last week, and oh my gosh, you should have heard my voice. It sounded like sandpaper on the bottom of a shoe or something. It was really weird. So look at there, I see Ron Ardoin and his bride are checking in. Jason Nebstead, of course. Good to see you guys. Hey, Leanne typed up all your requests from last week. I got them right here about the different topics. So I think I'm going to hit some of those. But first, I want to get on my little handy dandy laptop here so I can see the questions a lot easier. Mike Cottrell, glad to see you back. Glad to be back. It's been a fun last few weeks. I spent, I don't know, 4 or 5 days just kind of out of it with a little bit of whatever the credit is. Here's the deal, guys. When you raise kids, they grow up. Now, Ron, I'm gonna tell you, because y'all need to know this. Because y'all are raising some great kids. I see the pictures on Facebook and stuff. You raise those kids, they grow up, and then they leave. Then they come back and bring more with them. And they all have running noses and coughs and hacking sneezes and stuff. So you get to go through that cycle again. I love the grandkids. We've got a bunch of them. We've got 10 grandkids and 2 more in the oven for 2020. So we're going to be even more grandkid rich than we are now. So let's see here. I need to refresh this page because I want to acknowledge everybody. And see, I see Chuck Brinkman. Chuck, I know you sent me a message. Hadn't had a chance to look at it today. I was kind of running around a little bit with like a chicken with my, whatever the thing is, head cut off. You know, I try not to be real cliche, but I can't help it. Let's see here. Come on now. Oh, I think I'm seeing it. Oh, there it is right there. Here it is. I just got to blow it up. Click to enlarge. Look over to the right. There we go. Oh, yeah. Heck yeah. Oh, yeah. Heck yeah. Everybody, look. Ron, Jason, 2 other people. Bruce Condello. Good to see you, Brucey. Matt Hines checking in from Indiana. And is it cold in Indiana? And, you know what? Good gosh. I was talking to Mark Cornwell the other day from Coldskill, New York. He had 6 to 8 inches of ice on the pond. They were ice fishing. And then they got some weather where the temperature shot up to 60 degrees and it stayed there overnight into the next day. And by the end of the second day, he went from 6 to 8 inches of ice to an open pond. That ain't normal. Hello, Steve Lewis, my good friend from Arkansas. Aaron Schulte. Hey, good to see you, Aaron. How's it going, man? Bill Russell, Matt Singley, Mike Cottrell. Yeah, we talking there. Let's go. All right, let me see what else we got here. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. We're going to go as long as this voice will go. John Funk. John, it ought to be getting kind of cold up in your neck of the woods again. Brad Rom. Good to see you, Brad. Dick Tabbert. You guys know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like and share this video to your timeline now so we can build a bigger audience. I'm just really glad to be back listening here. It's raining at Dick Tabber's place. Mid-Michigan has not had good ice for fishing yet. You know, I don't know that that's really that unusual, is it? It's, well, I don't know. By now, Mid-Michigan, you guys should have ice. Hey, Mark Cornwell just checked in. Mark, I was telling him about your pond being frozen 6 to 8 inches of ice, and you had those 2 days of 60 degrees plus, and it thawed out in 1 day. That's amazing. That's flat out amazing. Matt Hines says it's been in the 50s, but they're going to drop it to the 20s starting tonight. I was looking at the New York weather for the next few days. Looks like upstate New York's going to go from that warm summer, mid-winter weirdness back to normal, like 14 degrees, 0, minus such. I see Leanne checking in, Connie Bingaman checking in. Actually, that'll be Fred because Connie has a better cell than he does. We got to go spend time with Fred and Connie. We love Fred and Connie. Spent some time in Illinois, went over to St. Louis just before Christmas, and then we hopped in, and I got to spend a couple days with Fred and Connie, which was a blast. It was on the heels of a pretty big snowstorm. They had like 6 or 7 inches over there, which was fun. Yep, Mark says, gone, baby, gone. The wind and warm temperatures, then cold. Here it comes. I would be really interested to write a story on these radical temperature changes, because that's getting to really be a trend. I know what happens in the South. It's fascinating to see what would happen. Are the fish confused? Do they get stressed when that water temperature gets up and then falls right back down? Does the water temperature really change that much there in Cobleskill? That would be cool. If you can be checking your temperatures, we could look at some profiles. That'd be kind of fun. So let me see here. We got Bill Russell, water temperature 64 degrees in South Alabama. Oh my gosh, you'll be getting bluegill spawns. Mark my words, bluegill will spawn on these bluebird days when it's 64 degrees in South Alabama. Ron says it's been so warm here, Bremen feeders are still wide open. Good. Feed those little darlings. Make them grow. The more they grow, the bigger they get and the more babies they have. Bob Harkar, Daniel Hendrick, Dick Tabbert, my first fish kill ever. I think freeze and thaw caused it. What do you think? Probably a dozen nice gills belly up. Well, Dick, I'm going to tell you it's water quality related. There's no doubt about that. And the temperature may exacerbate it, because what happens with cold-blooded animals when the temperature goes up, especially if it goes up 15 or 20 degrees and then turns around and goes back down again, that's highly stressful on a cold-blooded animal like that. So they go from cold to warm to cold, and then to go right back to warm, that can trigger some diseases. That's a stress factor. Just think about it like this. Let's say you're a 94-year-old granddad, decides to go check the mail. He lives in the country. He steps outside in his underwear, forgets to put on a coat and pants, walks down, gets the mail, comes back. 4 or 5 days later, he gets pneumonia. And it wears him out. What's the problem? The problem is he went to the dadgum mailbox without any clothes on. That's the problem. So it's kind of that way with these fish as well. So I would say that your fish kill is going to be related to water quality. I know you feed your fish really, really well. I know that because I've seen those fish. And the thing about freeze and thaw, this distressful, I would almost bet you some of your best bluegills are the ones that died. And those are the fish that are older. It kind of goes right back to that age thing. As a fish gains in years, it's more susceptible to stressors. And that freeze thaw can sure do that. The only reason it can't is if the temperature stays consistent, which freeze thaw and the water temperature, at 10 degrees below the surface is 40, then they're a lot less susceptible. There's John Krause, Brian Lawrence. John Krause, I drove within 15 miles of your house, I bet you. I went over to Brownstown, Illinois, and circled back through St. Louis. Craig McBride, howdy, Bob, good to see you. Michael Gray's checking in. Mark Dauber's checking in. Michael Gray has got a great story in the January-February issue of Pond Boss. Let me tell you something. The January-February issue of Pond Boss is, to me, by far the best one yet. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. It's $35. That's it for a year. One of my favorite catchphrases about this is, Pond Boss, $35 a year. Friday night date with your significant other, going to cost you more than that. It's gone the next day. This stays with you for a year. And there are some really, really, really good articles in here. We talk about what to do at higher elevations. Wildlife, talking about human injuries with animals. Trophy hybrid striped bass and small impoundment, stocking walleye. There's Michael Gray's got a great story about how he installed some siphon pipes in a Tennessee lake. You really, really need to check that out. Got some really good stuff. Talk about sunfish. Oh my gosh, probably one of the best stories in there is a Florida pond makeover with Tim Stewart. And Tim is probably going to be on here in a little bit. I talked to him earlier in the day, and Tim is having fathead minnow spawns right now in South Florida. Bruce Candello, the fish in my indoor tank seem to get a fungus more readily if the water temperature's cycling between 32 and 50 back and forth. If the water temperature stays consistent, that never seems to happen. That's absolutely true. Because what happens, Bruce, when that temperature drops, and I'm sure you know this, but we'll tell everybody else, when the temperature drops, the metabolism rate drops, food that the fish have taken in takes a lot longer time to metabolize. The metabolites are more within the fish. They're more stressed when that temperature drops. Then when it rises, their body wants to compensate for that. And then when the temperature drops again, it goes right back to that analogy about the 94-year-old man walking to the mailbox. They don't like it. Jason Nepstad, why does the green snot-looking algae grow so much this time of year? Because the water temperature is perfect. That filamentous algae loves to grow in water that's anywhere from 48 to 60 degrees. And when you've got that window and it stays fairly consistent for a few days, algae blows up. And that's what happens, especially when we have these warmer days like the entire nation has had earlier this week and late last week. Clark Cole, Philip Benefield, got my first issue of Pond Boss. It's so well written. I was very impressed. Yay, I love that. Thanks for that testimony. Let's see here. We got more comments. Bruce, Jason, probably because of increasing water clarity. Plus, some of those algae are temperature specific. That's exactly right. Dick Tabbert says I'm breaking up. Well, my wife hadn't told me that. I don't know. We got a good cell. We've got a good internet connection. I don't know why we'd be breaking up. Let's see. Aaron Schulte, will F1 and Florida strain do well together? Yeah, they really will. They do. As a matter of fact, they'll cross back and forth. And I think it's a good idea to have both. Where's Justin Stain? I bet Justin Stain's changing diapers. Justin's probably at home. He got a brand new baby girl that looks way more like him than it should. Sweet little baby girl. I haven't met her yet, but I'm looking forward to it. But I'm sure Justin's either changing diapers or feeding a baby or taking care of baby mama. Sorry about that coughing, guys. It's that voice thing lingering. I do have some cough syrup. All right, there's Trey Lilich. I know it's one or the other. Lilich, or I'm going to go with Lilich, Trey, from Iola, Texas. I don't know where Iola is. That's down around the Bryan College Station, Franklin, Calvert, that area down there. I know where you are. Can you talk a little bit about shoreline renewal after damage from cattle? I can. I see that a lot. When cattle are allowed to come around a pond, they like to wade down in it, especially in the summertime when it's hot. They'll go in a pond. I've investigated a number of fish kills over the years where the cattle rancher sprayed the cattle for flies. The cattle go straight to the water, and that fly toxin ends up in the water and kills their fish. But the best way to renew the shoreline is to stop the erosion. And the way to stop the erosion is to get the cows off. Now, all erosion is either amended or stopped by spreading the water out, vegetating the dirt, or adding something where water can flow through it like riprap. If it's a steep slope where you can't get grass growing, riprap, limestone from baseball to volleyball size stacked in there where water can flow through that minimizes the erosion. But most of the time, shoreline renewal after damage from cattle typically happens when the water level drops and you can get in there with a box blade, or the front end loader of a tractor, and you smooth it out and go back in and reseed. Reseed with good ground cover grasses. Depending on where you are, that could be Bermuda grass. That could be, like in Missouri, fescue could be a good one. If you seed it, get good roots. Now, fescue doesn't have a lot of nutrient value, and which really Bermuda doesn't either, except for cattle. If you got rid of the cattle, why you need the Bermuda grass. But turf grass, think turf. Think either turf or ground cover. And if you can do that after you repair the dirt damage, and you can do all that before it rains again, like what Otto will do sometimes, he'll renovate a pond, and then he'll drain a lot of the water out or drain it empty, then come back in, and the dirt that's moved down into the pond bottom, he'll take that dirt with the blade of his dozer and push it back up on the shore, recreate that 3-to-1 slope. Then he'll come in with these seed, I can't think of what they call them. It's rolled up fiber that looks like ground straw that's embedded with seeds in a biodegradable mesh. And you can roll it out on the shore and anchor it where water has to flow over it. And it's seeded, and so you can hold the soil in place until plants grow, and then that cloth pretty well breaks down and goes away. There's Kerry Martin. Good to see you, Tom Davis. You know, John Krause posted a question last week. He said, does cornmeal really work to get rid of algae? Cornmeal really doesn't, but corn gluten meal can kill certain kinds of filamentous algae. And it's a good organic method. It's a good way to do it. Another organic method to kill algae is barley straw. Now, the problem is as the gluten meal and the barley straw gets saturated with water and releases its chemistry, and it contacts algae and kills it, now we're dealing with decaying corn and gluten meal or barley straw. You know, so in a fairly young pond, I don't have as much heartburn with that as with anything else. Let's see, I see Mark Primo checking in. Good to see you, Mark. South Louisiana from crawfish country. Had a great time with Mark at the Bob Lusk Institute of Higher Pondology, which, by the way, you know what? Let me plug that right now. We've still got room for about 5 people in the springtime Institute of Higher Pondology. I got some new guest speakers. I'm going to try to see if I can persuade Bruce to come this time, which I think I can. Promise him a striper fishing trip or something. But that's going to be April 2, 3, 4, which is arrive like on Wednesday night, all day Thursday, all day Friday, all day Saturday, go home Sunday. And we've got room at LL, 2 for a few people, and we'd love to have you guys. Now, who needs to come? It's expensive. It's $1,500. But what that does is that includes all the food, housing if we have it, and a lot of good hands-on stuff. And I'm hoping April 2, 3, 4, we have better weather than we did in October. But we're going to change venues for the field trip. I've got a place that's closer. We're going to evaluate a lake, electrofishing, do some seining samples, learn how to move fish, learn how to handle fish, do some work with aquatic plants if they're really growing well by then. And it's if you are a ranch manager, if you are a really passionate pondmeister, if you want to be in the pond management business, this is an event to come to. Now, Ron Ardnawai, Bark, I know you're probably laughing. He said that? This guy said that? He wants to, boom, slap me right through the phone. Ron's coming. He's bringing his dad and one of his running buddies. And then we've also got a young pond management company owner from Idaho coming. So we've got some really good, talented people coming, and we've got room for you if you want to come. So if you do, just give me an email, drop me an email, and we will get you signed up for that and get you hooked up. There's Mark Primo checking in. Bruce Canello, an interesting point about watershed erosion issues is that not only do the plant roots decrease erosion, but also the leaves themselves absorb the energy stored in that rapidly descending raindrop so that the drop doesn't smack the ground so hard. You can read what he says, he's right on. And plus, another thing about the plants that I like is they can take up some of those nutrients as the water soaks into the ground as it's rolling toward the pond, and it can pull some of the nutrients that you might not want in your pond, especially if you got a buffer zone 20 to 50 feet up above and around the shoreline of the pond. If you've got a good buffer zone, especially with a variety of plants, they can absorb a bunch of that stuff and take care of it before it gets into the water. We had 3 requests last week about spawning beds. Daniel Hendrick, spawning bed structure. I've seen Daniel's place. Tate Smith, what should I add to my pond for better brim and bass bedding areas? And Travis Paul Smith, how to calculate the pond area and the number of brim and bass beds per acre. I'll tell you what I think. Here's what I think. Hey, Scott Hohensee, good to see you, man. My good friend from Purina Mills on the wildlife side of things. And Scott does an outstanding job. If you want to grow big deer, talk to Scott. I mean, that guy is passionate. He and Morgan Tyler. Morgan checks in on this show pretty often. Those guys are studs, man. They really are. We got some studs checking in tonight. You got some resources here, folks. So let's talk about brim and bass bedding areas. In order to figure out how to do that, I'm going to come at you from 30,000 feet, then we'll drill down to the ground level. When you're thinking about this, you got to understand it takes 10 pounds of bait fish to gain 1 pound of a game fish. So you really need places for bluegill to spawn and red ear. And if you have fathead minnows the first year or two, those golden shiners. So learn about each species of fish so you can figure out how they spawn and then provide that kind of habitat. Now, sunfish spawn in beds that could be the size of the hood of a pickup truck. Typically in the water from 6 inches to 18 inches deep, and in ponds that fluctuate, they'll spawn even deeper than that. They make little craters in gravel or sand because the eggs, they need to be able to swim around in the crater so that the eggs can have water moving through them so they can be oxygenated. The eggs have to breathe. So spawning beds about as big as the hood of a pickup for sunfish. How many per acre? I'm going to tell you at least 3. Now, where do you place them? Now we're going to get down a little bit closer to the ground. They need to be in shallow water, adjacent to water where plants are growing, or there's some dense cover, like brush piles. Because when a brand new baby fish is hatched and rises off the nest after a few hours or a few days, it needs to go be protected and have a place that it can eat. And if you think about a little bitty fish about that big, T90, it's going to have a little bitty mouth, even if it's a bass. So it's going to eat little bitty fish, little bitty insects, little bitty zooplankton. And it's going to be grazing things that are attached to plants. So if they've got a place to hide, and you can keep those baby bluegill, say, for example, alive for 45 days, they're 30 per pound, which means they're about that big by the end. That's a much, much, much better forage base for your game fish. So if you can have 3 to 5 spawning beds per surface acre of pond for bluegills and red ear sunfish, which they're interchangeable, both will use it, then you're going to see your sunfish reproduce a lot better and your biomass will go up. In other words, you'll have a bigger looby smorgasbord for the fish to feed on if you'll have more spawning beds adjacent to safety cover where the baby fish can also eat. Now, something else that's just as important about spawning beds is knowing that when a baby fish is hatched, it has no body fat. It's got to eat. And when you have that little bitty mouth smaller than the head of a pin, they're gleaning things out of the water. So fertility is a good idea. So with the water, have the water with a little bit of a green tint. So managing your plankton bloom, managing your spawning beds, that's going to help you have more baby sunfish. And even, you know what? And I don't really care about spawning beds for bass. All you need is 3 females and 2 males to spawn together, and you've got genetic diversity and more bass than you're ever going to need. So Jason Nipstad only needs 499 more spawning beds. Yep, well, just be sure to put all of them right around your dock. There's Liz Adams, my wife's longtime friend from school. Good to see you, Liz. Chris Ketchum's checking in. Chris Ketchum, he's got an angler's last name, and that guy loves to catch fish. He does a good job at it. So there's the answer to the other part of the question that Travis Paul Smith said, how to calculate the pond area. The pond area, we look at it 2 ways. When we're talking about stocking rates, talking about fertilizing, we're talking about harvest rates, we're looking at surface area. Surface area is length times width divided by 43,560 square feet. That tells you how big it is. So if you got a 100-foot wide pond that's 220 feet long, you got 44,000 square feet, that's an acre. And so we make our recommendations based on surface acreage. And the reason for that is almost all ponds are stratified in the summer, and all the productivity goes on in the epilimnion, which is the top layer, which may only be 6 feet thick. So we're not quite as worried about volume. Now, volume is important when we're talking about how much fertilizer to use, or if we're going to aerate, or if we're trying to figure out things like how much oxygen is being used. If we want to figure out herbicides, we're looking at volume at that point. So volume is length times width times height. And you're trying to figure out how many cubic yards or how many square feet or how many cubic feet of water. A cubic foot of water has a little over 8 gallons in it. So if you can multiply length times width times height, that's going to give you cubic feet. Then you can divide that up by 8.3, I think it is, or 7.8, somewhere around 8 gallons per cubic foot. That can tell you how much water you've got in your pond. Now, of course, every pond has a slope. So when I'm calculating volume, I'm doing that typically with a bathymetry map, which shows the contours at the bottom of the pond. And so I calculate the surface area of the top few feet, and I calculate that volume. Then I go to the next level, calculate that area and that volume, and then add them all together, and I got a pretty good idea. There's Willie Howell, our next door neighbor. Hey, boss. Hey, Willie. Good to see you, man. Dick Tabbert, my pond corners where all the weeds are is where most of the beds are. That's a great place. In corners, where there's weeds, that's where beds should be. Jesse Kelly Sr., I have some kind of stuff growing in my pond that's taking it over. It's not algae. It almost looks like super tiny lily pads, but the plant part of it sits above the water and the root system below. What will kill it? Well, I'm going to tell you this, Jesse Kelly Sr., we need to identify the plant. What you do, I tell you what, do this. Look up duckweed. See if that's it. Just Google duckweed right quick and then come back to me. Speaking of Morgan Tyler, he just pops in. Hey, Morgan, just talking about you. Saw Scott Hohensy on a while ago, so thought I'd recognize you. Hoping you join us. That's good. So, to go back and answer that plant question, we got to know the species of the plant. We got to know how much area it covers. Water temperature is important as well, because if you got plants growing now, you're in the South. I mean, we're in North Texas. We don't have any plants growing here at all. So you may be Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, South Texas. Guys, I apologize. It's that voice thing. I don't know what to do about it other than what we did. Been on antibiotics and junk. Mucinex. Chad Sepulvedo, discuss the use of gypsum chunk rock piles to settle colloidal clay issues, please. Sure. The science behind that, gypsum is calcium sulfate. It's what sheetrock's made out of. When you put gypsum into the pond and it dissolves into the water and reacts, that sulfate part wants to snag a positively charged ion, which is dirt or clay, and will grab 4 or 5 chunks of that, make it heavy enough that it'll settle out. So I like using chunks of gypsum for several reasons. As a matter of fact, at my house, I've got the remnants of a gypsum pile where all the gypsum rocks are about as big as baseballs to basketballs. Yeah, Morgan Tyler just texted me, tequila and jalapeno will fix that cough. Where do I rub the jalapeno? I don't have any tequila, but hey, I got a little cold toddy. Working on it. Thanks, man, for that tip. That's good. James Holt's liking this video. James Holt, haven't seen you in a while. I lurk on Facebook and I see your travels. That looks like fun. But anyway, the gypsum chunks I like because they dissolve slowly. So they'll build the volume slowly and they'll be stable. And the chunks, I like to overdo it a little bit. You know, if we do some perk test or some solubility test and we figure out we need 400 pounds per acre foot of water, I'd like to put 600 pounds per acre foot. And that stuff's not that expensive. You know, the freight's what kills you on gypsum typically. So using those big chunks, they last longer. Plus, when you have piles of the rock, it's fish habitat. The fish like it. Let's see here. And what else do we have from last week? We have Frank James says, I have a distressed tree near my dock and pontoon boat that may end up crushing them when it falls. Thus, I'll need to cut it down to keep it away from doing damage. It's very near the shoreline, so I'd like to have it fall in the pond to create more habitat. Given my situation, would you recommend trying to get it to fall at an angle in the water, maybe 45 degrees or straight out? Any tips on what I should consider before cutting? Yeah, move the pontoon boat. When you look at a tree, you can really see where it's top heavy and get a pretty good idea where it's going to fall. And I don't know what kind of tree you've got, but I've cut a lot of trees in my life. I mean, I've got a sawmill. I've watched trees fall, and sometimes they want to fall somewhere where you don't want them to. I mean, YouTube's full of videos of trees falling on houses and power lines and stuff. So what I would tell you is to get somebody that's done it before to come help you do it. And it could be a real good idea. I don't know what the tree looks like, but if you got a lot of small limbs and they're dead, cut them off. Cut the small limbs off. Because the bulk of that tree, if you can get it, and of course you don't want it anywhere near your dock, but if you can topple that tree straight down with the canopy in the water at a 45-degree angle from the shore, perpendicular to shore, you've knocked a home run. You know, so that would be a great way to do it. Now, you got to understand the physics. You know, if that tree wants to fall this way and you're trying to make it fall that way, you're going to have a reason for it too, which usually means something pretty heavy with a chain or a really big, thick rope up high, pulling it where you want it to fall, or trimming enough trees to get the weight off of it so you can have a rope to make it fall where you want it. So be kind of, if you haven't done that before, go downstream below your pond, cut a few trees and see what happens down there, because I know you got some dead trees down below that lake. Check that out. Sean McNew, is now a good time to stock gizzard shad? Yes, it is. Just so happens Sean McNew sells gizzard shad. But it is a good time because gizzard shad are easy to handle in cool water. Now, you know, I don't really want to, hell, why not? It's 7 o'clock. By the way, hashtag Pond Boss Magazine, click like. Share this to your timeline. $35 a year for Pond Boss Magazine subscription. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It's really well worth it, I'm telling you. James Holt will be the first one to tell you. James Holt has got a beautiful property, great looking lake. He works hard on that lake. He's done tons of things with it over near Gainesville, Texas, not far from me. And he'll tell you a lot of what he's learned. He's gotten out of this magazine and off the pondboss.com Ask the Boss forum. That's another good resource for you. There's Frank James. I thought you would be there. Let's see here. Let me go back to my list. Oh, I was going to talk about gizzard shad. Every single trophy largemouth bass lake that I manage, at some point, we add gizzard shad. Now, here's the catch. Gizzard shad can lay 250,000 eggs. And they grow fast and they get big. A 2-pound gizzard shad is normal. 18 inches long or bigger, this thick or this tall, this thick, you know, and when they get that big, there's not many fish that can eat them. So my standard go-to thought process is I want to estimate and be sure at least 25% of the bass biomass is at least 3¼ pounds or bigger. That's 18 inches in diameter. That bass's mouth is this big, they can eat a 12-inch gizzard shad. So as long as we've got a significant population of big bass to feed on the gizzard shad, then I'm comfortable stocking them. So, let's see, we got another new comment. James, you bet. Heck yeah, good. All right, so let's see what else we got here. Danny Mack. Can cedar pollen poison a pond? Yes, it can. And you know what? It doesn't really poison the pond. What happens, and we came across this years ago with pine pollen. There was just like a 2-week span of time in the spring when we buy fish from one particular fish hatchery in Arkansas, and right next to their vat shed were big pine trees. There was about a 2-week span where they would bring fish up either in the concrete tanks or in small ponds along this line of pine trees, and those pine trees would just dump pollen all over the water on a windy day, and within about 4 or 5 days of getting those fish home, they'd be dead. Well, what I think was happening is when they breathe that pollen, when that pollen gets mixed in from handling or gets mixed into the water column and they breathe it, like at Danny Mac's place, he's pumping water. And as he's pumping water and moving that water, it's mixing some of that pollen down into the water column. That doesn't mix, it emulsifies. But when those fish breathe that water and get that pollen in, it sticks to their gills. When it sticks to their gills, that's when it can be toxic to them, although it doesn't poison them, but it does inhibit their ability to breathe. Let's see what else we got here. Woo, here it goes. We may be going short again tonight, I don't know. Bob Mayer wants to manage a small pond for both big bluegills and some nice sized bass. Well, okay, there's a couple of things to talk about with managing a small pond for both big bluegills and some nice sized bass. In order to really get bluegills to grow huge, you need to have some crowded bass. Now, the reason that's the case is that you want overabundant reproduction of bass to be eaten. So, I mean, bluegills. When bluegills have a lot of babies, overcrowd, they stunt. And when that happens, then the growth rates plummet. So you got to be overcrowded with bass to be able to get those bluegill to get bigger sizes. Protect your biggest, I know that's offensive, I can't help it. When you got big bluegills, protect them. And if you want a few bigger bass, be selective about which ones that you call. So, there's the short answer to that question. Justin Mitchell, beaver nutria damage and management. The only way to really manage those is to trap them. Now, nutria actually do more damage than beavers do to dams. Nutria will burrow. Well, I was hoping I wouldn't do this to you guys. I'm so sorry, but what are you going to do? Just keep drinking toddies, I guess, and taking cough medicine. So, beavers are creatures of habit. They use the same slides over and over. Nutria are fairly good creatures of habit. The biggest problem with beavers is they'll eat your trees or girdle trees you don't want them to girdle. So, trapping them is the best way to get rid of them. If you don't know how to do that, speak with a professional trapper. I was talking to Kenny Backus before Christmas. He thought he was having an otter problem, so he brought a trapper in. He knew he had a couple of beavers that needed to go, but that trapper caught 6 otters within about 5 days, and Kenny had no idea he had that many otters coming in eating his fish. So that was a good thing. So let's see here. I think that's the last question on this big long list. Chad Sepulvedo, how soon after stocking bluegill can you start harvesting some for the fryer? I'd wait 3 years. Now that seems like a long time, and it is. But in the 3rd year, listen to this. In the 3rd year, protect your biggest ones, harvest the next size down. Because in the 3rd year, odds are high that the next size down are fish that are inferior growth rate fish. So if your biggest fish in year 3, like Dick Tabbert's got some bluegills that are, holy cow, 10, 11, 11 and a half inches long, knocking on the door of 2 pounds. I guarantee he's got fish that same age that are 8 inches long, 8 to 9 inches long, 7 to 9 inches long. That's the ones you eat. So protect the biggest ones, and as young fish are growing into that size range, start protecting them. Now, the way I like to do it is look at body condition. If you catch a bluegill that you think you should eat, but you look at it and it's broad-shouldered, we're on the top, deep-bodied, thick, stocky, throw that one back. Because that one is going to keep adding to the genetics. You're going to be adding growth rates and forcing younger fish to get bigger than it. So, year 3 is about the time you can start harvesting fish. Now I'm talking about a brand new pond, newly stocked, well fed, well managed. By the end of year 3, you should be ready to start culling a few fish. So if you stock it in the spring, fast forward basically 2.5 years later, and start looking at, which is in year 3, start looking at body conditions and fish that you're seeing come to the feeder. on fish that you're catching and weighing and measuring and compare those. Because I promise you, 20 to 40% of your bluegills that are 3 years old at that point are going to be the best. Then they're going to have some that are the same age that aren't quite as big. That's the ones you want to take. Okay, Todd Austin's joining in. So we're at 7:10, guys. Let me see what else we got here. I think I've gotten everything. Glad Bruce chimed in with that erosion stuff and the other thoughts he's got. Let's see here. Let me go back to that in a minute. Yeah, good. That's good. Good stuff. All right, let me see. Let me go on down here a little bit. Matt Hines, does catching a bass on a bed affect the spawn, and should you harvest any bass during the spawn? That's a great question, because you talk to an angler or a conservationist, they're going to tell you, leave that bass alone. What I'm going to tell you is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for recruitment of young bass into a system to catch a bass off a nest. Now, if you're going to catch and release one, catch it, release it fast, because if you don't, something's going to come in and eat the eggs. If you take that bass, walk all the way around the pond, then decide to release it, odds are going to be high that bluegill is going to eat it before you get to it, before they get back. So, and let me justify that statement. I don't want to just sit here and say, yeah, I'm Bob Lusk, pond boss. It's okay to catch bass off a bed. The males are the ones that guard the bed. You're fishing for the big girls. The big girls will spawn in more than one bed. They'll spawn with more than one male. It's not unusual for more than one male to spawn in the same bed. One male is going to guard the bed, guard the eggs until they hatch, and then he's going to shove them out there and wish them luck. So if you do the math, the fish really their goal is to replace themselves with one male and one female to adulthood. So if a female bass lays 50,000 eggs over here, how many of those need to hatch to replenish the stocks of bass in that lake? Not many. So I am not opposed to fishing beds. I'm not, especially if you're after the girls, because the girls, they're fly by night, so to speak. They come in, do their business, they go off. Then they might go to another one. And a female, she may spawn in 5 different beds. She may. There's Bobby Bolton. Hey, Bobby, good to see you, man. Eric Avery, Todd Austin, don't you just hate cold season as a speaker? Yeah, I do. I do. You know what's really fun is I love the grandkids. I love hanging out with them. But when they cough in my mouth or my face, geez, it doesn't take long. Here we go. So, I tell you what, I sounded like Ed Orgeron last week. Wasn't that a fun college game? I didn't have a dog in either hunt, but man, my school's A&M, and they couldn't beat any of the top 10 teams they played this year. LSU beat all of them. And holy cow, Clemson, Dabo Swinney, I love that guy. I can listen to Dabo all day long. Ed Orgeron, ladies talking like this back day. One of my favorite things I saw online on YouTube somewhere was what's that deal on the TV when it tries to interpret what somebody's saying. Trying to interpret what he was saying was hilarious. I love it. Go Tigers, that's right. That was so much fun. Eric Avery, hi Bob, what's the most important pond maintenance we should do after ice out? The most important thing to do, depending on which ice out. Like if you had ice earlier, it's gone now. But it's going to come right back. So after ice out in the spring, normally, probably the most important thing is to be sure that your aeration system is ready to go, because you're going to want to fire that up. The next thing to do is just start looking for plants, and I would investigate to see if you've had any winter kill, because if you have, you need to figure that out soon so you can do something about it. Which doing something about it, really only means replacing fish and setting up a feeder. I start feeding fish around 55 degrees, which my fish are eating right now, which is weird. In North Texas, they never eat in the middle of January. They're eating right now. They're slow, sluggish, and I got the feeders cut way, way back. But bluegill, and I've got one pond that Debbie loves. It's got Japanese koi, some beautiful koi. They're feeding. So I think the most important pond management or maintenance thing is probably aeration. Because once the water temperature hits 60, that's about the time to fire up your aeration system. That's the water temperatures are rising. That's before water stratified. You can start oxidizing bottom sediments. Anything that's settled to the bottom over winter, you can get it up, get it start moving in the water column, convert the nutrients, get ready for a plankton bloom. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Aeration. If you have an aerator, that's the first thing I'd be looking at. Water temp of 55. Yeah, 55 to 60. Chris Blood, man, I need to talk to you. I'll ring you in a couple of days. Debbie and I are getting ready to travel for a couple of days. We're headed up to see some friends of ours in the cold. So I'll ring your number when I can. I want to talk to you about a number of things. So, and basically, I just want to catch up with my friend Chris. Chris works with Texas Hunter Feeders, which is by far, to me, the best feeder company out there. Products are outstanding. Customer service is stunning. When I call them, if I get them on the phone before 2:00, whatever I need to order goes out that day, and the customer gets it the next day, or if I'm ordering it from my house, whatever. So Chris Blood he's right there at the top of the team with Texas Hunter, and a great sponsor of this show as well. So going back, Eric, after ice out and aeration, get your feeders going. Get the water moving, get your feeders going. Fish are going to start feeding at 55 to 60 degrees. And be sure your spawning beds are in order. If you don't have any spawning beds, get them going. If you need more cover, structure, brush piles, do it while the ice is on it. Drill a hole in it. Put a tether your brush pile to something. A brick or concrete block or something. I don't know how big a hole you can dig. You need to drill one big enough to get a concrete block down. Then when the ice comes off, that brush pile will sink right there where you anchor it. So Dick Tabbert's going to be making lots of fish cover for his pond. Man, y'all be working on that right now while it's chilling you out. You know, you do like Bruce does. Bruce has got a recirculating system in his basement under his garage, and he's growing fish right now. He's got fish that are nice and cozy and warm with water temperatures probably in the 50s. He's probably got red ear sunfish, yellow perch, something like that. I know Bruce is doing something. So that's where we're going. Let's see here. I think I've covered all the questions. If you guys have any more, hit me real quick. Because I think I'm going to take another sip of this cough syrup and wrap it up. I do want to thank Purina Mills. Because one of my favorite things about Purina Mills, I've mentioned this on this show before, is they really care about us. They care about you, care about me. They work extra hard to develop good fish foods. And then when we partner with Texas Hunter, without a Texas Hunter, the fish food is not nearly as relevant because how many people have time to go out on the dock every day and feed the fish? So when you got this extra hired hand out there that you're not paying a lot, that came from Texas Hunter, that's out there like clockwork every day. Oh wait, it is clockwork every day. They're going to feed your fish a good, high-quality fish food made by Purina Mills. Jason Nepstad. I'm going to take Jason's last and I'm going to wrap it up. Well, maybe not. There's Chad Gillespie checking in. I am planning to build a 1,000 square foot fenced-in area to grow eelgrass in close to the spawning beds. That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. So what Jason is talking about, he's going to build a 1,000 square foot exclusion fence to keep the turtles, fish, carp, whatever, out of that area so he can establish eelgrass real close to his spawning beds. That's the kind of habitat that will allow bait fish to really thrive. Brilliant. I love that. Chad Gillespie says, any issues with using PVC for fish cover? No. Actually, now what I would do, PVC, if you're going to use it, get a little bit of rough sandpaper and rough it up a little bit. Because it's what you really want. One of the things I love about PVC is you can fish it without getting hung up. You know, if you're going to make some PVC trees, you bet. You know, a piece of 2-inch PVC pipe, 6 feet tall, drill 1/2-inch holes every 6 inches, turn a quarter turn, drill a hole, quarter turn, drill a hole, all the way down to the bottom, shove 1/2-inch PVC through it. But take 5 minutes or less, get some PVC pipe. Some rough grain sandpaper and rough up that PVC, because that way paraphyton can stick to it better. Now, algae will grow on PVC, but it will grow way better on PVC that's roughed up a little bit. So I would sure do that. Frank James, any feeders you recommend for large pellets? The only one that I know that will throw the large pellets are cannon feeders. And I've not used them, but I've heard some good things. I've also heard a couple things about how they, when they explode, when they blow the feeders out, or blow the feed out there, it'll break those pellets up sometimes. I've had that talk with Chris Blood and the powers that be there at Texas Hunter, but they're not convinced that the marketplace is ready for a feeder that throws big pellets, and there's engineering issues. So throwing those great big half-inch pellets like this for feed-trained bass, there's not a good way to do that I know of. There may be something, but the cannon feeders, you might look at those 4 big pellets. But Texas Hunter is our go-to. Okay, guys, you know what? I'm going to wrap it up. I really appreciate you guys hanging in tonight. Hope you cover your ears when I cough. Can't help it. Wish I could. But it's going to keep on healing up. And I'm going to hit the road for a few days. Be back Tuesday. Look forward to seeing you guys again on Wednesday. Remember, $35 a year. Subscribe to Pond Boss. This is by far the best issue we've ever had. And I'm very critical of my own work. I love this issue. If you want to see a sample copy, send an email to info@pondboss.com. We'll send you a copy. So in the meantime, we got a couple of new comments. Let's see what we got. Let me look if I can scroll down there and get them. Here we go. Yep, all right. You bet. Yep, you bet. You guys are welcome. Think LSU feed all the other teams boudin, made them fat and lazy? There wasn't anything lazy about Clemson. Just LSU had better offense, better defense, better specialty teams. And I love both those teams. To me, that was a great college football game. All right, guys. Pond Boss Magazine. Be sure to tune in next week. I have no idea what the topic's going to be, but I'll sure think about it. If you have some ideas, send me an email or I'll check back on this thread. So, guys, thanks again for checking in. And until next week, we will see you. Adios.